The emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council convened in chaos. Half the chamber was empty. Entire star systems had gone dark as the Sarkoth Empire swept through Federation space like a plague of metal locusts. Council Prime, Varthek's scaled hand shook as he read the latest reports. The Altarian Republic has fallen. The Korthani Empire requests immediate evacuation assistance. The Zentori Collective reports total communication breakdown with their outer colonies. President Kyung Seo sat in the human delegation area, watching the panic unfold with grim satisfaction. 3 months ago, these same representatives had voted to abandon the Velati. Now they were learning what abandonment felt like. "How is this possible?" demanded Ambassador Threx, his forearms gesturing wildly. The Sarkoth were contained in the outer rim. "Our fleet intelligence said they couldn't penetrate core systems." "Your fleet intelligence was wrong," Kyung replied calmly. The Sarkoth adapted. They learned from each victory, grew stronger from each world they consumed. Now they're unstoppable. "Not unstoppable," interrupted a new voice. General Hyung Shin, humanity's top military strategist, entered the chamber with confident strides. "The Sarkoth can be defeated. We've been doing it for months." The chamber erupted in shouting. Representatives demanded to know how humanity had survived when entire Federation fleets were being destroyed. General Hyung waited for the noise to die down, then activated a holographic display. "The Battle of Kepler Station," she announced, showing footage of living ships flowing through Sarkoth formations like water through rock. "The Defense of New Terra." More footage showing bioenhanced human soldiers working alongside Velathi crystal warriors. "The Liberation of Proxima Colony." Sarkoth ships breaking away from their fleet, their crews acting independently for the first time in their species' history. Council Prime Varthek stared at the displays in disbelief. How are you achieving these victories?" "Partnership," General Hyung replied simply. "We didn't abandon the Velathi. We learned from them. We combined human adaptability with Velathi biotechnology and created something neither species could achieve alone." "Impossible," snarled Ambassador Threx. "The Velathi are pacifists. They have no military technology." "They don't need military technology," General Hyung explained. "They have something better. They understand harmony, cooperation, growth. We provided the tactical knowledge. They provided the biological foundation. Together we created ships that think, soldiers that adapt, and strategies that evolve." The chamber fell silent as representatives absorbed this information. Then Council Prime Varthek leaned forward, his reptilian eyes fixed on President Kyung. "You will share this technology with the Federation immediately," he commanded. "All research data, all biotechnology, all enhanced personnel will be transferred to Federation control." President Kyung laughed, a sound that cut through the chamber like a blade. "You're joking, right? You abandoned the Velathi when they needed help. You threatened to blockade human space when we offered sanctuary. Now you want us to save you?" "The survival of galactic civilization is at stake," Council Prime Varthek replied coldly. "Yes, it is," President Kyung agreed. "And we're the only ones actually fighting for it." At that moment, urgent alarms began sounding throughout the council chamber. The massive displays around the room lit up with tactical data showing a Sarkoth fleet approaching Nexus Prime itself. "Hive Emperor Malthek's personal armada," reported the tactical officer, his voice tight with fear. "Over 1,000 ships, including their largest bio-destroyers. Estimated arrival time, 6 hours. Panic seized the chamber. Representatives began shouting orders to evacuate their homeworlds, demanding Federation fleet protection that no longer existed. In the chaos, President Kyung stood and walked to the chamber's central podium. "Silence," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the din. The chamber gradually quieted, all eyes turning to her. "You want to survive? Then listen carefully." She activated her personal communication device, sending a signal to the human fleet waiting just outside the Nexus system. "Admiral Taehyung, you're cleared to enter the system." "Bring everything we have." "Everything?" asked Ambassador Threx nervously. "How many ships do you have?" 47 combat vessels, President Kyung replied, "plus support craft and civilian volunteers." The chamber erupted again. 47 ships against 1,000? Council Prime Varthek's voice cracked with disbelief. "That's suicide." "Maybe," President Kyung admitted. "But those 47 ships aren't like anything the Sarkoth have faced before. And more importantly, we're not fighting alone. As if summoned by her words, new contacts appeared on the tactical displays. Ships began emerging from hyperspace around Nexus Prime, but they weren't human vessels. Sarkoth ships, reported the tactical officer in confusion. But they're not attacking. They're transmitting surrender requests. President Kyung smiled. Those aren't enemy ships. Those are free Sarkoth, individuals who broke away from the hive mind after exposure to our biotechnology. They've been joining us for weeks. More ships appeared. Philothi bio-vessels that moved like living creatures through space. Human-designed craft with crews of multiple species working in harmony. Even a few Federation ships whose crews had abandoned their official orders to join the growing alliance. General Hayoung took over the tactical display, showing the approaching forces. The Sarkoth Empire expects to fight a traditional Federation fleet. Rigid formations, predictable tactics, centralized command. They won't know how to respond to what we're bringing. Which is what? Asked Council Prime Varthek. Chaos, General Hayoung replied with a grin. Beautiful, creative, unstoppable chaos. The battle began 4 hours later as Hive Emperor Malthek's massive fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The Sarkoth biodestroyers were the size of small moons, their hulls bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Surrender now, came the Hive Emperor's transmission, and your deaths will be swift. Admiral Taehyung, commanding the human-led alliance from his flagship Unity's Dawn, replied simply, counteroffer. Surrender now and we'll teach you what freedom feels like. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The Alliance fleet didn't form traditional battle lines or follow standard tactical doctrine. Instead, living ships flowed through space like schools of fish. Bioenhanced crews anticipated enemy movements. And free Sarkoth vessels confused their former hive mind by acting unpredictably. Young pilot Sunjay, now commanding a squadron of living fighters, led the first wave. His ship, Resilient Dawn, had grown larger and more sophisticated over months of combat. Its biocrystalline structure incorporating lessons learned from every battle. Remember, Sunjay told his pilots, we're not trying to destroy their ships. We're trying to free their crews. The living fighters dove into the Sarkoth formation like dolphins through waves, releasing bio-dampening fields that disrupted hive mind control. One by one, Sarkoth vessels began breaking away from their formations as their crews experienced individual consciousness for the first time. On the surface of Nexus Prime, Colonel Wanho led a team of bio-enhanced soldiers and Philothi crystal warriors to protect the government centers. But their real mission was to demonstrate something the watching galaxy had never seen: perfect cooperation between radically different species. The Federation representatives are requesting immediate evacuation, reported his communications officer. Tell them evacuation is available to anyone who wants it, Wanho replied, deflecting a Sarkoth energy blast with his crystal-enhanced reflexes. But we're staying to fight. Anyone who wants to join us is welcome. To everyone's surprise, several Federation representatives chose to stay. Ambassador Threx, despite his earlier protests, picked up a weapon and stood alongside human soldiers. Perhaps, he said quietly, it's time to learn what courage really means. In space, the battle reached its climax as Hive Emperor Malthek himself engaged Admiral Taehyung's flagship. The massive biodestroyer dwarfed Unity's Dawn, but the smaller ship danced around its opponent with impossible grace. You cannot defeat the Hive, transmitted the Hive Emperor, his mental voice carrying the weight of 1 billion enslaved minds. Unity is strength, chaos is weakness. You're half right, Admiral Taehyung replied, guiding his ship through the biodestroyer's defensive grid. Unity is strength, but you don't understand what unity really means. Unity's Dawn released a cascade of biodampening charges directly into the biodestroyer's hull. The effect was immediate and devastating, not to the ship, but to the hive mind control systems. Throughout the massive vessel, Sarkoth crew members began to think independent thoughts for the first time in their lives. The Hive Emperor's scream echoed across all frequencies as his absolute control began to fracture. Individual Sarkoth throughout his fleet started making their own decisions, following their own impulses, discovering their own fears and hopes and dreams. What have you done? The Hive Emperor demanded, his mental voice now carrying confusion and something like terror. We've given your people a choice, Admiral Taehyung replied gently. They can choose to follow you or they can choose to be free. Most are choosing freedom. As the battle ended, the sight that greeted the galaxy was extraordinary. Tell them we're about to show the galaxy what happens when you corner a species that Do Colonel Wanho Jun stood perfectly still as the Velothi Bioenhancement Matrix completed its work. Crystal filaments, thinner than human hair, wove themselves through his nervous system with delicate precision. The process didn't hurt, but he could feel changes happening throughout his body. "How do you feel?" asked Dr. Isil Nam, monitoring the procedure from her control station. Banks of screens showed Wanho's vital signs in real time, tracking everything from brain activity to cellular regeneration rates. "Different," Wanho replied honestly. "Everything seems sharper, clearer. I can hear conversations 3 rooms away, and I swear I can smell the metal composition of the walls." Crystal Guardian Lyrian observed the process with interest. The massive Velothi had volunteered for the first bioenhancement program, allowing human technology to augment her crystalline form. The result was remarkable. A being that combined Velothi harmony with human tactical thinking. "The enhancement is successful," Lyrian announced, her crystal body pulsing with satisfied blue light. Human Wanho's neural patterns remained stable while gaining enhanced processing speed and sensory awareness. Dr. Isol made notes on her tablet, still amazed by what they were achieving. 6 months ago, the idea of mixing human and Velothi biology would have been pure science fiction. Now they were creating something entirely new, hybrid beings that were more than the sum of their parts. "The ethics committee is still debating this program," she reminded Wanho as he sat up from the enhancement chair. "Some people think we're changing what it means to be human." Wanho flexed his hands, watching crystal patterns flow just beneath his skin. "I don't feel less human. If anything, I feel more connected to everything around me. Is that bad?" Before Dr. Isol could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the research facility. Through the speakers came an urgent announcement. "All personnel to emergency stations. Sarkoth attack fleet detected entering system." Wanho was on his feet instantly, his enhanced reflexes responding faster than normal human reaction time. "How many ships?" 30 confirmed, came the reply from the command center. "They're moving directly toward the colony worlds." This was the moment they'd been preparing for. The first bioenhanced soldiers were about to face real combat alongside their Velothi partners. In the pilot ready room, young Sanjay O was going through final checks on his flight suit. At 22, he was the youngest pilot selected for the living ship program. His vessel, Resilient Dawn, had been grown rather than built. Its biocrystalline structure formed through a partnership between human engineers and Velothi crystal singers. "Nervous?" asked his wingman, Lieutenant Hyuna Kim, as she sealed her helmet. "Terrified," Sanjay admitted. "My ship talks to me, Hyuna. Not in words, but I can feel what it's thinking. It's excited about the coming fight." "Mine too," Hyuna replied with a grin. "Apparently living ships enjoy combat." Who knew? The hangar bay was a sight that would have amazed earlier generations of humanity. Sleek vessels that seemed more grown than manufactured hung in launch cradles, their hulls pulsing with gentle bioluminescence. Each ship was unique, shaped by the personality and needs of its pilot. "Resilient Dawn," Sanjay whispered as he approached his ship. "Ready for another dance?" The ship's response came not as words, but as a feeling of eager anticipation. The cockpit opened like a flower, revealing an interior that looked more like the inside of a seashell than a traditional spacecraft. As Sanjay settled into the pilot's seat, crystal filaments extended from the ship's walls to interface with his flight suit. Suddenly, he wasn't just inside the ship, he was part of it. He could feel the solar wind on the hull, sense electromagnetic fields, detect the approach of other vessels through vibrations in space-time itself. "All pilots, launch when ready," came Admiral Taehyung's voice over the communication system. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy the Sarkoth fleet. We're trying to confuse them, disrupt their coordination, buy time for the civilian evacuation." The living ships launched like schools of fish, flowing out of the hangar bay in organic formations that no military manual had ever described. Traditional military tactics relied on rigid formations and predetermined attack patterns. But these ships moved like living creatures, responding to threats and opportunities with fluid grace. The Sarkoth fleet approached in their typical formation, a perfect sphere of vessels moving in absolute coordination. Each ship knew exactly where every other ship was at all times. Their battle computers could predict and counter any conventional attack. But the human Velothi ships weren't conventional. Sunji's resilient dawn detected the Sarkoth formation, while still thousands of kilometers away. The ship's biocrystalline sensors could analyze enemy movement patterns and predict their responses with uncanny accuracy. "I know what they're going to do before they do it," Sunjay reported over the communication channel. "It's like reading their minds." "Same here," replied Lieutenant Hyuna. "My ship is showing me weak points in their formation that I never would have noticed." The first engagement lasted only minutes, but it changed everything. The living ships flowed through the Sarkoth formation like ghosts, striking at key vessels before vanishing into the stellar background. The Sarkoth tried to adapt, but their hive mind couldn't process tactics that seemed to shift and evolve in real time. On the surface of New Terra, Colonel Wanho led his bio-enhanced soldiers in defending the evacuation sites. His enhanced senses could track Sarkoth ground forces through dense forest, while his crystal-augmented nervous system allowed him to coordinate with his team at the speed of thought. "Contact. 2 kilometers north," he reported to his squad. 12 Sarkoth warriors moving toward evacuation site 3. Private Sujin Yu, another bio-enhanced soldier, checked her weapon with movements that seemed almost too fast to follow. "Engagement tactics, sir?" "Standard disruption pattern," Wanho replied. "But remember, we're not trying to kill them all. We want to confuse them, make them think we're everywhere at once." The Sarkoth warriors moved through the forest in perfect formation, their insectoid forms communicating through electromagnetic pulses. They expected to find terrified civilians or conventionally armed human soldiers. Instead, they encountered something that didn't make sense. The human soldiers seemed to anticipate every move, appearing where the Sarkoth least expected them. Their weapons fire was unnaturally accurate, striking with precision that should have been impossible. And strangest of all, they fought with a coordination that rivaled the Sarkoth hive mind itself. "How are they doing this?" demanded the Sarkoth squad leader, its mandibles clicking with frustration. The answer came from Crystal Guardian Lyrian, who had been observing the battle from a concealed position. Her massive crystalline form rose from behind a boulder, patterns of light flowing across her surface in complex warnings. "They fight as one because they choose to be one," she announced in perfect Sarkoth language, which she had learned during the enhancement process. "They are not controlled by a single mind. They are united by shared purpose." The Sarkoth warriors paused, confusion rippling through their formation. They had never encountered a species that could achieve coordination without central control. "Impossible," clicked the squad leader. "Unity requires the hive. Individual minds cannot achieve perfect cooperation." "Watch and learn," Lyrian replied, her crystal body beginning to pulse with combat patterns that Wanho's enhanced senses could read and respond to. What followed was unlike any battle in recorded galactic history. Human soldiers, enhanced with Velothi biotechnology, fought alongside a crystalline being who had learned human tactical flexibility. They moved with fluid coordination that adapted to every changing situation, each individual contributing their unique strengths to the collective effort. The Sarkoth warriors, designed to function as parts of a larger machine, couldn't adapt to enemies who fought like water, flowing around obstacles, striking from unexpected angles, working together without losing their individual creativity. In orbit, the space battle was reaching a similar conclusion. The Sarkoth fleet, frustrated by their inability to pin down the living ships, had begun firing indiscriminately at everything in the system. "They're getting desperate," observed Captain Sango from the bridge of his enhanced vessel Dancing Crane. "Their formation is breaking." "Down," Admiral Taehyung watched the battle unfold from the command center, amazed by what he was seeing. The living ships weren't just fighting the Sarkoth, they were teaching them something new. Individual Sarkoth vessels, separated from the main hive mind by jamming signals, were beginning to act independently. "Sir," reported his tactical officer excitedly, 3 Sarkoth ships have broken off from the main fleet. "They're not following hive mind commands anymore?" "What are they doing?" Taehyung asked. "They appear to be thinking for themselves, sir, making individual decisions." This was unprecedented. The Sarkoth hive mind was supposedly unbreakable, the foundation of their entire civilization. But exposure to human Velothi tactics was causing cracks in that foundation. Young pilot Sunjay experienced this firsthand when his resilient Dawn came under attack from a lone Sarkoth fighter. But instead of the predictable assault patterns he expected, the enemy ship fought with erratic. The warning came through hyperspace communications at 3 a.m, ship time. Admiral Taehyung Lim was pulled from sleep by his aide's urgent knocking. "Sir, you need to see this," Lieutenant Minji said, her face pale with worry. "The Sarkoth have crossed into the outer rim. They're moving toward human space." Taehyung dressed quickly and made his way to the command center of the orbital defense station above New Terra. The massive screens showed a tactical display of local space, with red markers indicating Sarkoth fleet movements. "How many ships?" he asked his tactical officer. "At least 200 confirmed, sir. Probably more behind them. They've already consumed 3 systems in the past week." Taehyung studied the display with growing unease. The Sarkoth didn't fight like other species. They moved in perfect coordination, their hive mind allowing thousands of ships to act as one massive organism. Traditional fleet tactics were useless against them. "What about the Galactic Federation?" he asked. "Radio silence, sir. Since the Velothi incident, they're not sharing intelligence with us." On the research station orbiting New Terra's moon, Dr. Yuna Song was working late in her laboratory. The past 6 months had been the most exciting of her career, working with Velothi scientists to understand their biotechnology. Around her, tanks of growing crystal formations pulsed with soft light. "Dr. Song," called her assistant Jaehyun, "we're getting reports of Sarkoth movement in the outer systems." Yuna looked up from her work, pushing her glasses up her nose. "How long until they reach us? At their current speed? Maybe 2 weeks?" Yuna nodded thoughtfully, then returned to her experiment. In the tank before her, human engineering and Velothi crystal growing had created something entirely new. A hybrid material that could think, adapt, and grow in response to changing conditions. "Jaehyun, call Admiral Lim, tell him we need to talk." 3 days later, the first Sarkoth scouts entered the Kepler system. The human patrol ships that met them were vastly outnumbered, but instead of engaging in traditional combat, they did something the Sarkoth had never encountered before. They ran. But they didn't run in straight lines or predictable patterns. The human ships scattered in dozens of different directions, some toward asteroids, others toward gas giants, a few diving into the system's sun's corona. The Sarkoth scouts tried to follow but found themselves chasing ghosts. "Report," demanded Hive Prime Karthek aboard the Sarkoth command vessel. His insectoid form was directly connected to the ship's neural network, allowing him to control hundreds of vessels simultaneously. "The prey ships have vanished into stellar debris fields and planetary atmospheres," reported one of his sub-minds. "Our pursuit craft report equipment failures and navigation difficulties." This was wrong. Prey species fought back directly or surrendered quickly. They didn't scatter like startled fish and hide in dangerous places. The Sarkoth hive mind was efficient because it could predict and counter organized resistance. But the humans weren't being organized at all. Back on New Terra, Admiral Taehyung was implementing tactics he'd learned from studying human military history. Instead of meeting the Sarkoth head-on, he was using guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run attacks, supply line harassment, and unpredictable movement patterns. "The Sarkoth expect us to fight like other Federation species," he explained to his staff officers. "Big fleets, formal battle lines, predictable strategies, but we're not other species." Captain Sangho Park, commanding the fast attack ship Dancing Crane, demonstrated this perfectly. His ship was loaded with the new hybrid technology Dr. Yuna Song had developed, living metal that could adapt to damage and crystal computers that could process probability faster than traditional electronics. When Sarkoth supply convoy spotted in Sector 7, came the communication from a human scout ship. 12 cargo vessels, 6 escorts. "Understood," Sangho replied. "We're going fishing." The Dancing Crane emerged from the asteroid field like a ghost, its hull shimmering with patterns of light borrowed from Velothi technology. The Sarkoth escorts immediately moved to intercept, their formations perfect and coordinated. But Sangho's ship didn't behave like a normal vessel. Its living hull flowed around incoming weapons fire. Its crystal navigation system anticipated enemy movements and adjusted course before the Sarkoth could react. Within minutes, 3 cargo ships were crippled and the dancing crane had vanished back into the asteroids. Hive Prime Karthek felt the first stirrings of something his species rarely experienced: confusion. The human ships were like water, flowing around obstacles, striking where least expected, disappearing before retaliation could arrive. Adapt battle patterns, he commanded his fleet. Increase patrol density. Establish overlapping coverage zones. But the humans adapted faster. When the Sarkoth increased patrols, human ships began operating in smaller groups. When overlapping coverage was established, the humans started using civilian ships disguised as cargo haulers. Every time the Sarkoth hive mind created a new strategy, the humans found a way around it. Dr. Yuna Song's breakthrough came during the second week of fighting. Working with Crystal Weaver Fina, a brilliant Velathi biotechnologist, she successfully created the first truly living ship. "Look at this," she said excitedly to Admiral Tae-hyung during his visit to the research station. "The ship's hull isn't just self-repairing, it's learning. Each time it takes damage, it develops better defenses. Each time it encounters a new threat, it adapts." The prototype vessel, designated Harmony's Edge, looked like no ship ever built. Its hull was a flowing mixture of metal and crystal, pulsing with gentle bioluminescence. Inside, human and Velathi crew members worked at stations that seemed to grow from the ship itself. "How does it perform in combat?" Tae-hyung asked. "See for yourself," Yuna replied, pulling up combat footage from the ship's maiden voyage. The video showed Harmony's Edge engaging a Sarkoth patrol squadron, but instead of trading shots at long range, the living ship flowed through the enemy formation like a dancer, its hull rippling to deflect energy beams while its weapons struck with uncanny accuracy. "The ship is bonded with its crew," explained Crystal Weaver Fina, her crystalline form pulsing with excitement. "Human creativity guides Velathi biotechnology. The result is greater than either could achieve alone." But success brought new problems. 3 days after Harmony's Edge's first victory, a formal communication arrived from the Galactic Federation. By order of the Federation Council, the message began, "All human Velathi biotechnology development must cease immediately. The Velathi refugees will be transferred to Federation custody, and all research materials will be surrendered for examination." Admiral Tae-hyung read the message twice, feeling his anger grow with each word. "They want us to hand over the Velathi, after abandoning them?" "It gets worse," said his communications officer. "They're threatening to blockade all human systems if we don't comply. They say our uncontrolled experimentation poses a threat to galactic security." Tae-hyung laughed, but there was no humor in it. "A threat to galactic security? We're the only ones successfully fighting the Sarkoth." That evening, he called a meeting with the Velathi leaders who had settled on New Terra. Crystal Singer Ithara attended, along with several other elders and Crystal Weaver Fina. "We have a choice to make," Tae-hyung told them honestly. "The Federation wants us to hand you over. If we refuse, they'll treat us as enemies." Crystal Singer Ithara's massive form pulsed with complex light patterns of sadness and resignation. "Perhaps it would be better. We do not wish to bring war between your people and the galaxy." "No," interrupted Crystal Weaver Fina, her younger crystal body blazing with defiant light. "The Sarkoth destroyed our homeworld while the Federation watched. Now they consume Federation worlds while we fight. We will not abandon those who showed us kindness." Tae-hyung nodded slowly. "Then we fight. But not just the Sarkoth. We'll have to fight the Federation too." "You would do this?" asked Crystal Singer Ithara. "Risk everything for refugees who have nothing to offer but gratitude?" "You're wrong about having nothing to offer," Tae-hyung replied with a slight smile. "You've already given us something precious. You've shown us what we're capable of when we work together." As news of the Federation ultimatum spread through human space, something remarkable happened. Colony after colony voted to support the Velathi refugees. Merchant ships volunteered to carry supplies to isolated worlds. Civilian scientists offered their services to the biotechnology research program. Captain Sang-ho Park, fresh from another successful raid on Sarkoth supply lines, put it best in his message to Fleet Command. "The Federation abandoned the Velathi when they needed help. Now they want to abandon us. Well, humanity doesn't abandon its friends." In the command center above New Terra, Admiral Tae-hyung looked at the tactical display showing Federation fleets moving toward human space from one direction and Sarkoth forces approaching from another. "Sir?" asked his aide nervously. What are our orders? Taehyung smiled, remembering something Crystal Weaver Fina had told him about Velothi philosophy. The strongest crystal formations aren't the hardest ones. They're the ones that bend without breaking, that flow around obstacles while maintaining their essential structure. He turned to his communications officer. Send a message to all human ships and stations. The massive ship New Seoul drifted through space like a moving city. Captain Do-Yun Park stood on the bridge, watching the endless stream of Velothi refugees boarding through the docking bays. Each transport brought thousands more of the crystalline beings, their bodies dim with fear and exhaustion. How many more? Do-Hyun asked his first officer. 2.3 million so far, Captain, Lieutenant Borum replied, checking her tablet. The last transport ship should arrive within 6 hours. Do-Hyun nodded, but worry gnawed at his stomach. The New Seoul was designed to carry 500,000 human colonists. They were packing in nearly 5 times that number, and the Velothi had very different needs than humans. In the medical bay, Dr. Nara Choi was discovering just how different those needs were. She knelt beside a young Velothi who had collapsed during boarding. The being's crystal body was barely glowing, the light patterns weak and sporadic. What's wrong with him? Asked Crystal Tender Zephys, one of the few Velothi who could speak the human language directly. Most of his people communicated through light patterns that required computer translation. I don't know, Nara admitted, running her medical scanner over the patient. His vital signs are strange. It's like his whole body is shutting down, but I can't find any injury or disease. Zephys's crystal form pulsed with sad blue light. He is dying of despair. Without the crystal matrices of our homeworld, without the song of our great crystals, we fade. Your ship's metal walls are like poison to us. Nara felt her heart sink. She had studied Velothi biology for months, but books and recordings couldn't capture everything. The Velothi weren't just crystal beings. They were connected to their world in ways humans barely understood. How long do you have? She asked quietly. Without intervention? Perhaps 6 of your months. Children like him, less. In the engineering section, Minho Kang was having his own crisis. The life support systems were overloaded, the artificial gravity was fluctuating, and strange energy readings were coming from the Velothi quarters. Chief, you need to see this, called out Engineer Tajin, pointing at his control panel. The Velothi aren't just living in those compartments. They're changing them. Minho hurried over to look at the readings. The metal walls in the Velothi sections were showing molecular changes, as if the alien's presence was somehow altering the ship's structure. Is it dangerous? Minho asked. I don't think so, Tajin replied, scratching his head. Actually, the metal seems to be getting stronger, more flexible. It's like they're making it better. An idea began to form in Minho's mind. He grabbed his toolkit and headed for the nearest Velothi quarters. Meanwhile, on Earth, Counselor Hana Yoon faced her own battle in the human Senate chambers. Half the senators wanted to turn the refugee ships around and avoid conflict with the Galactic Federation. We're risking everything for aliens we barely know, argued Senator Park, slamming his fist on his desk. The Federation will cut off all trade, all technology sharing. We'll be isolated and helpless. Helpless? Hana stood up, her voice carrying across the chamber. We're talking about 2 million beings who can turn dead worlds into gardens. They can grow living ships, create crops that adapt to any environment, heal poisoned soil in decades instead of centuries, fairy tales, scoffed Senator Kim. Pretty lights and crystal gardens won't help us when Sarkoth fleets come for our worlds. Hana pulled up a holographic display showing footage from the Velothi homeworld before its destruction. Beautiful cities grew from living crystal, surrounded by forests that seemed to glow with their own light. Rivers ran clean and bright between crystal spires that hummed with gentle music. This isn't fairy tale, she said softly. This is what they can do. And they're offering to teach us. Back on the New Seoul, Minho had made his way to the largest Velothi gathering area. Hundreds of the crystal beings sat in a circle, their bodies pulsing with synchronized light patterns. At the center sat an elder, her massive form dim and flickering. Excuse me, Minho said to Crystal Tender Zephys, who was nearby. What are they doing? Sharing strength, Zephys replied sadly. Elder Lissa is very old, very wise. She carries memories of our homeworld crystals. The others give her their energy so she can remember, so she can try to recreate what we have lost. Minho watched the beautiful, tragic ceremony and felt something click in his mind. What if we could help? What if we could build something that works like your crystal matrices? Zephyr's body flashed with sudden bright hope. You would do this? But you know nothing of crystal growing, of harmonic resonances. No, Minho admitted. But we know metal and circuits and power systems. You know crystals and living things and harmony. Maybe together we know enough. The next few days became a whirlwind of activity. Minho worked with Velothi crystal growers to understand how their technology functioned. It wasn't like human machines at all. Instead of forcing materials into shapes, the Velothi guided growth, encouraged harmony, created balance. Dr. Nara Choi discovered that the Velothi could actually enhance human healing if they were healthy enough to share their abilities. A Velothi healer named Crystal Singer Mora had helped repair a broken arm in minutes, the bone and tissue growing back together like fast-motion footage of a plant growing. It's incredible, Nara told Captain Do-hyun during their daily briefing. They don't just heal injuries, they help the body remember how to be healthy. But they're dying, Captain. We need Minho's solution to work. In the engineering bay, that solution was taking shape. Human fabricators worked alongside Velothi crystal singers, creating hybrid structures that were part machine, part living crystal. The first prototype looked like a metal tree with crystal fruit, its surface pulsing with gentle light. When they activated it, the effect was immediate. Velothi throughout the ship began to glow brighter, their light patterns becoming stronger and more complex. Young crystal tender Zephyrus laughed for the first time since leaving his homeworld, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. It works, he said, his crystal body blazing with joy. We can feel it singing, calling to our crystals, reminding us of home. But the real breakthrough came when Elder Lissa approached the hybrid device. Her ancient form was barely glowing, her life force nearly spent. When she touched the crystal metal surface, something extraordinary happened. The device began to change, growing new crystal formations that spiraled around the metal framework. The light patterns became more complex, more beautiful, and throughout the ship every Velothi felt it. The song of a new kind of crystal matrix, one that combined the best of both worlds. How is this possible? Asked Dr. Nara, watching the readings on her medical scanner as Velothi throughout the ship began to recover. Elder Lissa's translated voice was weak but filled with wonder. Your people, you do not force harmony. You find it. You adapt. You make new songs from old melodies. This is why we came to you. This is why we hoped. Captain Do-hyun received an urgent communication from Earth just as the first hybrid crystal matrix came fully online. Counselor Hana Yoon's face appeared on his screen, grim but determined. The Senate voted, she announced. We're officially offering sanctuary to all Velothi refugees. But Do-hyun, the Federation is furious. They're threatening trade sanctions and military action. Some senators think we should hand over the Velothi technology to prove our loyalty. What did you tell them? Do-hyun asked. Hana smiled for the first time in days. I told them that loyalty earned through betrayal isn't worth having. The Velothi chose us, Captain. Now we choose them. As the new soul continued its journey toward human space, something new was growing in its corridors. Humans and Velothi worked side by side, learning from each other, creating things neither species could have imagined alone. Crystal Tender Zephyrus found Captain Do-hyun on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The young Velothi's body pulsed with calm blue patterns of contentment. Your people confuse us, Zephyrus said softly. The galaxy calls you chaotic, unpredictable, dangerous. But we see something else. What do you see? Do-hyun asked. Hope, Zephyrus replied, his crystal form glowing brighter. You see a problem and you don't accept that it cannot be solved. You see difference and you don't fear it. You see weakness and you make it strength. This is why we will survive. This is why we will thrive. Looking out at the stars, Captain Do-hyun felt a strange certainty settle in his chest. The galaxy might call humanity chaotic and unpredictable, but maybe that chaos was exactly what the universe needed. The Great Council chamber of Nexus Prime buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their assigned seats, their various forms creating a strange rainbow of alien life. Some breathed through gills, others through complex breathing apparatus. A few didn't seem to breathe at all. Jiho Kim adjusted his simple black suit and watched the proceedings with growing anger. The human delegation sat in the newest section of the chamber, their chairs still smelling of fresh metal. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Federation 3 years ago. and they were still treated like unwelcome guests at a fancy dinner party. "The matter before us today is simple," announced Council Prime Varthek, his reptilian voice echoing through the chamber's translation systems. "The Velathi homeworld has fallen to the Sarkoth Empire. We must decide if we will offer military aid or sanctuary to the survivors." Suali leaned forward in her seat next to Jiho. As the human delegation's xenobiologist, she had studied the Velathi for months. They were beautiful creatures made of living crystal that glowed with soft colors when they communicated. More importantly, they were completely peaceful. They had never fought a war, never built a weapon, never even raised their voices in anger. "The Velathi are weak," declared Ambassador Threx from the Korthani Empire. His forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke. "They refuse to build defenses. They refuse to train soldiers. They chose this fate." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jiho felt his jaw clench. He had seen the footage from Krysthera, the Velathi homeworld. Millions of crystal beings had tried to flee as the Sarkoth ships descended like metal locusts. The peaceful cities had been torn apart in hours. "They contributed nothing to galactic defense," added Councillor Zephys from the Altarian Republic. "Why should we risk our ships and soldiers for beings who won't fight for themselves?" Crystal Singer Ithara stood slowly in the center of the chamber. The Velathi elder was over 3 meters tall, her body made of translucent blue crystal that pulsed with gentle light. When she spoke, the patterns of light dancing across her surface were translated into words by the chamber's systems. "We do not ask for weapons or soldiers." Her translated voice was soft and musical. "We ask only for a place to live, to continue our research, to share what knowledge we have. We offer our biotechnology, our understanding of living worlds, our ability to heal damaged planets." "Biotechnology," scoffed Ambassador Threx. "Pretty gardens and glowing crystals. What use are those against Sarkoth battle fleets?" Suali stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. The sound cut through the chamber's polite murmur like a knife. "May I speak?" Council Prime Varthek's cold eyes fixed on her. "Humans may observe these proceedings, but you have no voice in Federation decisions." "Then I'll speak anyway," Sua said, stepping forward. Jiho started to reach for her arm, then stopped. He knew that look on her face. Sua had something important to say. "I've spent 2 years studying Velathi biotechnology," she continued, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Do you know what they can do? They can take a dead world, a ball of rock and poison, and turn it into a garden in 50 years. They can create living ships that repair themselves. They can grow food that adapts to any climate, any soil, any atmosphere." "And what good does that do against Sarkoth weapons?" asked Councillor Zephys. "The Sarkoth strip planets bare," Sua replied. "They take everything and leave nothing but dead rock behind. But the Velathi can bring those worlds back to life. While you're all worried about building bigger guns, they're thinking about what comes after the war." The chamber fell silent. Crystal Singer Ithara's body pulsed with soft golden light, patterns of gratitude flowing across her crystalline surface. Few beings had ever spoken in defense of the Velathi and galactic politics. Council Prime Varthek called for the vote. One by one, the representatives cast their decisions. The Korthani Empire voted no. The Altarian Republic voted no. The Centauri Collective voted no. World after world turned their backs on the Velathi refugees. When the final tally was announced, the result was overwhelming. The Galactic Federation would offer no aid to the Velathi. They were on their own. Crystal Singer Withara stood motionless for a long moment, her body's light dimming to barely a whisper. Around the chamber, other Velathi observers began to pulse with deep blue patterns of grief and despair. Their entire civilization was dying, and the galaxy's most powerful alliance had just told them they didn't matter. Jiho Kim stood up and walked down to the chamber floor. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. When he reached Crystal Singer Ithara, he looked up at her towering crystalline form. "The human delegation offers sanctuary to any Velathi who wish it," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. The explosion of noise was immediate. Dozens of representatives shouted protests and objections. Council Prime Varthek slammed his scaled fist on his podium, demanding order. "You have no authority to make such an offer," the Council Prime declared when the noise died down. "Humanity is a junior member of this Federation. You will follow Federation decisions." Jiho turned to face the assembled representatives. Behind him, Crystal Singer Ithara's body began to glow brighter, patterns of hope and gratitude flowing across her surface. The Federation just voted that this isn't a Federation matter. Jiho said calmly. You all decided the Velothi don't deserve help. Fine. That means humanity is free to make our own choice. This is unacceptable, snarled Ambassador Threx. You will be expelled from the Federation. Your trade agreements will be cancelled. Your colonies will be blockaded. Maybe, Jiho replied with a slight smile, but at least we'll be able to look at ourselves in the mirror. Sua Li had joined him on the chamber floor, along with the rest of the human delegation. They stood together facing the assembled might of galactic civilization, a small group of beings from a young world that had barely learned to travel between stars. Crystal Singer Withera knelt down, bringing her massive crystalline head closer to Jiho's level. The patterns flowing across her surface were unlike anything the translation systems had recorded before, complex swirls of light that seemed to contain layers of meaning. She's saying thank you, Sua whispered, tears running down her cheeks. But it's more than that. She's saying they've been watching us. The Velothi have been studying humanity for decades, and they chose to come to us last because they knew we were different. They knew we would help. The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives shouted and argued, but Jiho wasn't listening anymore. He was looking into Crystal Singer Withara's deep blue eyes, seeing something that the rest of the galaxy had missed. The Velothi weren't weak. They were just different. And sometimes different was exactly what the universe needed. As the human delegation escorted the Velothi representatives from the chamber, Jiho made a silent promise. The galaxy might have abandoned these people, but humanity never would. Whatever it cost, whatever it took, they would find a way to help the Velothi survive. The real question was whether the galaxy would survive what came next.